Hi, my name is Ashley Bruner, and I'm a second-year psychology student taking psychobiology at the University of Cincinnati. And I am super interested in the anatomy of the brain and how that connects to behavior and personality expression. So I'm super excited to be presenting about the prefrontal cortex, which after this class, I've decided is hands down my favorite part of the brain. So a little bit of background. So the prefrontal cortex covers the most frontal part of the frontal lobe, super in connection with orchestration of thoughts and actions with our internal goals. And I just think it's super cool that this one tiny part of the brain controls such a huge part of our personality expression and who we are as individuals. So like our senses of humor, our friends, our likes, our dislikes, just everything, our patience, goal orientation. So that's why I picked this. I just think it's super cool how much it controls. So a little bit about the prefrontal cortex. So what does it do? So essentially it makes us human. So it controls personality expression, complicated decision-making and behavior moderation, the knowledge of good versus bad, good versus evil, working towards future goals and the actions that'll be required to achieve what we want, decision-making and personality expression. So most commonly, all of these together are called executive function. So as I mentioned, executive function includes the ability to differentiate between conflicting thoughts, determine the difference between good and bad. So that has to do with morality, ethics, just how we look at the world, and decide which actions will help us achieve what we most desire. So yeah, it determines our future consequences of our current actions. And having executive function means we're able to work towards a future goal, and we can express our feelings and our personalities through our thoughts and actions in ways that are socially acceptable. So the prefrontal cortex supports concrete rule learning. The more anterior located regions of the PFC are used in more abstract thinking, which is super cool. So that has to do with thinking about like religion and space and just deeper thoughts that are more abstract and not as concrete. So it enables us to feel and recognize our feelings like guilt, remorse, excitement, nervousness, weariness, any other emotion you can think of. It's all processed here. So when we feel these things, the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that allows us to recognize these feelings and decide how we're going to act in accordance with how we feel. And the PFC is split into a few different parts. So the dorsolateral PFC, the orbitofrontal PFC, and the ventromedial PFC, which are all labeled there. So starting with the dorsolateral PFC, this is the topmost part of the PFC, which is highlighted there, manages cognitive processes. So those include planning, cognitive flexibility, and dealing with working memory. So this controls how to direct and maintain attention to a particular task and how to problem solve. So when we're focused on what's happening in the present moment, it's our dorsolateral PFC that's working in connection with our hippocampus for retrieval and use of long-term memories that can aid us in solving present problems. This also has super high connections with PTSD and OCD. So yeah, there's just been a lot of underactive dorsolateral PFC activity that's been noticed in people with PTSD and OCD, which I thought was super interesting. The next part is the orbitofrontal PFC, which works in high connection with the limbic system. So this part of the brain allows us to make decisions based on our emotional information, which isn't always good, as we all know. So it's the other parts of the PFC that actually regulate this emotional decision-based information. So, but this part is super connected with the limbic system. So decision-making, taking emotions into account. Huge in emotion regulation and how to express that in social situations with other people, big in friendships and just how to read the behavior of other people, how to read the emotions of other people, and how to act accordingly. And deficits in the activity in the orbitofrontal PFC have been noticed in people with borderline personality disorder because they just struggle with being empathetic and reading the emotions of other people and behaving in accordance with the behaviors of other people. So they just struggle with doing things in a way that are socially acceptable. So that's just been really interesting as well. And the next part is the ventromedial PFC. So this enables us to look at the bigger picture because of connections to the amygdala, thalamus, temporal lobe, and olfactory system. So yeah, and the amygdala is a huge part of the limbic system. And this allows us to, again, just look at larger scale goals rather than just what will bring us immediate pleasure. So this has a huge role in personal decision-making and learning from past mistakes. So we're able to look back at our past and their consequences and make connections on how to better improve our future behavior so that things end up better than they were in the past. And activity in this part of the brain has been noted when people are feeling emotions like courage, compassion, shame, and guilt. So I just thought that was super cool as well, that specifically this area of the brain was highlighted when those emotions were felt. And another cool fact that I've actually known for a long time, that is another reason I picked this, was because the PFC doesn't develop until your mid-20s, which explains a lot of poor decision making in teens and young adults, just because their PFCs are not fully developed yet. So this just explains, you literally can't process your emotions. You're just not fully able to make the decisions that you would be if your PFC was fully developed. So I just thought that was really interesting as well. On another the famous case of Phineas Gage, which was just super cool. I heard about this a long time ago and made me super interested in the role PFC has in personality expression. So Phineas Gage, he was a family man, super calm, even-tempered, very goal-oriented, achieved everything he set his mind to. An explosion put a rod through the left side of his face and skull and destroyed most of his left PFC. So it destroyed most of his left prefrontal cortex. And after the accident, he became a completely different person personality-wise. He became angry. He had a horrible temper. He screamed. He swore a lot. He didn't enjoy spending time with his family. He couldn't conceptualize reaching a goal. He didn't know the steps to take to reach future goals. So the destruction of his left side of his PFC really impacted his personality, which I just thought was extremely interesting. So it really just goes to show how important the PFC is in personality expression. And another link that I thought was super cool was the link between PFC and depression. So there is significantly less left PFC activity than right PFC activity in people with depression. So the left PFC is controlling positive emotion, goal orientation, so pleasure. And the right PFC controls negative emotions, negativity, things like that. So people with depression, they have higher activity in the right PFC than the left. So they experience more negative emotions. It's more difficult for them to pursue goals. They're not as responsive to rewards, and they don't have normal problem solving abilities. So that was a really cool link that I found as well. And yeah, that was my presentation. And I thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you learned as much about the PFC as I did in this course.